and we're doing our first 45-minute meeting.
Recording. Okay, we're good. Can I just show them that you real quick so you're a real person? There it is, okay. Okay, Miss Dr. G, we're just gonna forget about this happening. Okay, so you've got the documents in front of you, Mr. Galindo.
I see that.
There should be three things that we have. The agenda, that's the shortened one.
Got one.
Then we've got all of the kind of predetermined answers. However, as we walk through these questions, please feel free to guide me during the next steps and just kind of make sure if I'm on the right track with some of these, because this is really just my own thinking when I was answering these.
Okay.
And then finally, you have the self-assessment and how I rated myself, and that really will be used to guide just my next steps in terms of the hours that I accumulate. My 80 hours this fall.
Okay.
So we'll start with the two objectives of our meeting today. Today's meeting will be 45 minutes long, and the first one will be how you prefer us communicate. So throughout this first semester and the second semester, there might be times when we feel like we need to communicate about something. Maybe you find a new project that has just come up and you want to, point me in that direction, or a meeting that you'd like me to attend. Any type of those communications, would you prefer those happen phone call, texting, emails, or even a Zoom?
Actually, the box isn't there. I prefer in person. So.
Okay, in person.
But phone calls, I guess. Zoom would be the last. I think, and I know we're all busy, but just the human element I think is important. So phone calls, probably text and email would be in that order. But hopefully we can, for a number of reasons, actually have some. And either you can come back here, or I can go out to visit with you. But previously with other students, that's what I as much as possible. If we can, you're a busy person as a principal. So phone calls, texting, emails, and in person.
Okay, sounds good. So the next step or the next phase will be, or you know what, let me go into that second question or the second objective. One of the goals of the practice this semester is to kind of talk through what those 80 field-based activities might look like, determined by the self-assessment. This is in order, so I'm going to go into the questions. That's what they'd like us to do.
Okay.
The second portion, the questions 4 through 8, are directly connected to those 80 hours.
Okay.
So we'll go in that order just to kind of keep it, just to kind of flow. So we'll go into the first questions. And so the first questions that they're asking of me, and then please feel free to interject at any time, wants me to describe my present position and previous positions that have prepared me for a leadership role. What do I perceive to be the next steps in my career, and what positions do I expect to hold 5 years from now, and even 10 years from now?
Good questions.
So presently, I'm in my 6th year as a middle school principal. Previously, I served as the vice principal of a middle school within Northside, an assistant principal in the district just north of ours, and middle school teacher for 8 years. My next sort of thinking, the next step might be an executive director of secondary administration or an assistant superintendent. I also recognize 10 years from now, maybe something like a deputy superintendent. I do feel like I lean a little bit more towards the administrative side rather than the C&I side. I do love the C&I stuff, and I do spend quite a bit of time on my campus in that area. But when I think about my day-to-day, when I think about operations and the way a school is run, I really do feel like I lean more towards that. From the seat of an executive director or deputy superintendent, I can develop support systems that directly affect students in a really systematic way. These positions have also developed principals, and I feel like as a mentor, I've been able to be a mentor twice now for new principals in Northside, and I've really, really enjoyed that.
So your time in the other district, you were the associate, or was it a vice principal?
Assistant principal.
Assistant principal. Mm-hmm. Was there an associate, I guess, or a vice? So it was you and the principal. And did you have an academic dean? Okay. Did you play some role in that?
Yes.
In that. Okay.
Very much so.
Because where I'm going with this is that, in our district we have the academic dean and the assistant or associate principal, or both actually. And so that really in our district, and certainly in your future, you spoke leaning more toward the administrative side of things, which is great, but that's also, I mean, very much the operational side, and
Mhm.
not so much sometimes the sexy part, if you heard, for lack of a better word, because you're dealing with the problems,
Mhm.
you know, and so in your mentoring of other students, then where did you see that they kind of had the most difficulty? Was it on the academic side, which in itself, and in certain phases during our careers, that may, and the demographics and where you're at, the community, that could be a bigger challenge, one might say, than the operational side. And so I see things as a spectrum between instructional and operational, and the perfect principal, perfect leader really has a good balance of both of those. But usually after 32, 33 years, most of us seem to lean one side or the other. You seem to think it's operational, because I'll tell you, I was thinking you were more on the instructional side of things. So it's good that you perceive yourself and think that you want to and are more operational. Yes?
I feel like the instructional side comes very naturally to me, but I enjoy the operational side. Learning just all things operations, so facilities to personnel issues to leading, guiding, crisis management, weather, all of those types of I loved being an associate principal and all that it encompassed, because when I was in Bernie, I had to sort of do both, and right out of the classroom I felt super comfortable on the instructional side. So what I had to learn and gain was, the operational. I really didn't know the difference. And then whenever I came here to Northside, and it was strictly the vice principal, and I got to just really submerge into that learning. Oh, I loved it.
Were you ever teacher of the year?
No, I wasn't.
Okay.
I was nominated at Hobby.
Well, that's a good thing. Because as we move, you go through your career, because a conversation I've had with many that have sat in that chair who have been teacher of the year, it's like, and typically those individuals lean toward the instructional side, and then struggle because not everyone teaches in the manner that they did, or see instruction in the manner, like through their lens. And there is a big part of our jobs, as you know, as a principal, that is on the flip side, the human element side, which is, I think, equally as important. Even though we refer to ourselves as instructional leaders, which we are, we're instructional leaders, but anyhow, I always try to see where it is that, one might lean toward, and then, of course, give you the support on the other end, as you're going to need that, whatever it may be, operational or instructional. And then, so you want my job then? That's what you said. For the record, this is being recorded. She wants to be in this office. That's the deputy superintendent. No, because the other one in our district, and certainly hope you're here and you move on to great things, is we have a deputy for instruction too. However, one thing that that I think is great is if you were to go even in that direction, 10 years from now, is that you've been a principal. So I think, and again, through all the many years, that position and those individuals, sometimes I find myself reminding, it's like, I get it, and we are instructional leaders, but we're dealing with COVID right now, or we're dealing with whatever right now, and so it's good that you have that. So anyhow,
Thank you.
Just some thoughts there as we go through these.
Well, we'll move on to number 2. What strengths, both knowledge and skills and personal strengths, do you possess that will serve you well as a district leader? What competencies do you need to build capacity and to be an exemplary district leader? So my thinking through this was committed, positive leader, energized for the profession for sure. Love kids and all things education. I'm very organized. I have a unique knack for time management. It's just my love.
I'm going to come back to that.
Calendars are my favorite. Forward thinking and definitely communication, both verbal and nonverbal. I believe in advocating for the best possible educational experience for every child, empowering inclusivity and a culture of collaboration. I'm leaning in that direction a little bit about in terms of my doctoral program, and that final dissertation. I've just been doing some reading in that area, and I like it. I like a lot of things, but anyway, yes.
So, love of kids, yeah, that's a biggie. You need to do that and have that. And I mean, we're all or we should be in the business because of that. This role, and even now as a principal, even more so when you leave the campus, becomes a lot more, I guess, adult-centered, for lack of a better word. I mean, and you got to keep and not forget, and that's why I gravitated to that line of kids. You know, I've been in cabinet meetings, I've been in other meetings where it's like, okay, how good is this for kids? Because if you can look anyone in the eye and say this is in the best interest of kids, and I think that's a good decision, and I always, even now, certainly try to make that a point in decision making. But looking at the other points that you made here and your time management and so forth, one thing is, and I know you're a mom, yes, that moving forward is hopefully you have a support system, because making the jump from a principal into this role, where now you're basically supporting, supervising, working with principals all day, every day. It's a heck of a commitment, which that's your first word there, and you're going to need that time management, especially for now it's a different balance. You know, earlier I was talking about the balance between instruction and operational. In the district this size, in the central office role, the balance between family and work is important, because there are days, and just this weekend alone, I mean, I'm talking to these folks all the time, and the cell phone, oh my gosh, I mean, it's just, you can't hang up on the weekend and think you're done, or even in the evenings after 6. I tell people that all the time. That's a big change of just 20 years ago. And so those are some key points to kind of consider, is hopefully with your family, have either a spouse or mom, dad, or all of them if you can, and if you have family here, this is going to be time consuming, and need your support, and not that you shouldn't be, and you do need to be at your child's events and so forth, but it is it really puts your I look at your time management there, term to the test, as far as how it's going to actually unfold once you're in the role, and I certainly hope and think you will be in a role like that. So, and then you went on to list competencies, so I'll let you jump back up to those 1, 2, and 3.
Thanks. I appreciate you saying that. If you don't mind me just adding to that, I definitely feel like going from, the VP role, I was like so blessed to be at Garcia when I was at Garcia, because my daughter came in as a 6th grader while I was there. So I got to like do all the things and be there and kind of get it set up the way I wanted it set up for my boy whenever I went over to Rawlinson. So I didn't ever get to be with him at Garcia, but since Savannah's at UTSA now, and Dominic is a junior.
Jeez, I thought they were little.
No,
I'm getting old.
He's driving to school.
Oh my gosh,
I know.
I remember. I thought your boy was. Well, he must have been middle, early, high, and now he's driving. So,
he's driving. He's already at the end. I can't even believe it. So
15,
our
16?
baby, he's 16. 16, 5'9", 5'10".
Well, that's good then. That, I mean, because this job, and you're living it now, but you balanced it, is even more difficult with when they're younger.
Yeah,
So that's good. One of them in college.
It
already,
was
my gosh.
at UTSA with me.
How cute is that?
She's at the main campus.
Mom and daughter.
I'm at downtown campus, but she's cheering. She made the team.
Oh wow!
Yeah, so we get to go all the games, and we're so much fun. It's been so
she
great.
cheer. I'm assuming in high school too.
Oh yeah, she was a captain.
So that continues. There you go.
I was a cheer mom. I was a very quiet cheer mom all her years.
Because, and you said that quietly, because you should. Cheer moms, definitely, that you can lose points, maybe even on this, because of your cheer mom. There's a whole crazy factor associated.
I was like, oh gosh, ask Dad. Dad's gonna do that. Dad's gonna be a cheer dad.
I've had, believe it or not, cheer moms in this office, because inevitably there will be issues such that.
I have some experience there, sir. Some experience. So anyway, okay. So the domains that I listed here were domain 1, competency 4 in particular, respond to and influence the larger political, social, economic, legal. Another domain was domain 2, competency 6, whereas advocating, nurturing, sustaining. are something. And this kind of goes in here. It can go in here. So if this helps a little bit better.
And these are some of your ones?
Areas of want, yes, areas of want. So in domain 1, competency 4, yes, I listed myself as a 1. So responding to an influence in larger political. So when I think of like the social, economic, legal, cultural, like that whole piece, I don't feel like I've had a whole lot of opportunity to learn that piece of the role. So I definitely feel like that's a learning opportunity for me. In terms of is that the one that talks about, because there's one that talks about the board.
Board of Trustees, yeah, you're
Yes,
right on it.
okay.
And that's a good one, and not surprising though that you'll need to develop.
Yeah, definitely felt like I was a 1 there. In domain 2, in competency 6, here we go. Advocating, nurture, sustain an instructional program and a district culture that are conducive to student learning and staff professional growth. So I feel like I would like to learn more about that. What does that look like? I don't know if that's like Dr. Jordan's area, Deanna Dean, if that's their spot. I'm not really sure. I just don't know a whole lot about that. Another area that I feel like I definitely need was domain 3, competency 8, which was apply principles of effective leadership and management in relation to district budgeting, personnel, resources. So I feel like I'm going to say this as I really get excited about the budget. Going into the principalship, we don't get a whole lot of, right? So I had to sort of create my own system. And I've really enjoyed recognizing how to use resources to benefit kids, right? Or professional development, or opportunities that they might have. And that in and of itself is like a little job that you really have to focus in on, right? To do it well, to allocate those resources appropriately. So as a district, when I think about what that would look like, transportation, oh my gosh, just that whole piece of it. And then, curriculum and instruction, and what monies look like, staffing, personnel, nurses, extra, right? Just going through the pandemic, kind of thinking about some of the decisions that you guys were making in the background. I go back to, it's all budget, it's everything's budget, right? And I think conversations that I'm having at my campus level, I try to use my campus level as like a mini version of how you would run the district, right? So anyways, I just feel like I need more.
Yeah, no, and that's a good analogy, but I'll say this, because that's probably the number one thing I hear of, as you know, I work closely with NLA, which is always neat to hear and talk and visit and be part of the pipeline for principals in Northside. And that's the one area that every principal or junior admin, and even, of course, your teachers who've never, experienced anything in admin, is, I don't know anything about budget. I can only imagine, what that's going to be like. And I go back to my days, and that too was a concern, but I quickly realized, and I'll tell you, you've been at Rawlinson for 6 years?
It's my 6th year.
You haven't gone broke over there, and I haven't heard any. The lights are on, the water, and everything.
We're good.
So my point being is that we, in a system like Northside, have a lot of good people in place. For you, it may have been a bookkeeper that was already there, and or even if she wasn't yours, and you hired someone, the training that we do for them or with them, and then working with yourself as a principal. There's a lot of checks and balances, and we do. I mean, you obviously know, as after 6 years of a principal, you don't have to sit there as you might at home and say, okay, I got a plan for X amount of electricity and the light and the groceries and the this and the that. I mean, no, we make it in a way for you to where my days as a principal were more of a Title I budget, where I'm going to put X amount for these initiatives and for substitutes and for supplies and materials and whatever, and so you as well possibly have some level of that planning, but it isn't anything that we struggle a lot with principals.
Okay.
And so I think again we have so much in place that helps them. So if you were to be a superintendent, or even for our that system and those people in place that, for Dr. Kraft, new superintendent, and before that, when Dr. Woods took over and I was in this role, the checks and balances are there too. And we've been fortunate to have, starting with obviously he's a CFO, you can consider him our deputy for finance, is like having a really good bookkeeper. It's like, they have their stuff in order.
Awesome.
And so in this role, or even when you work with principals, you've already mentored some. It's not like you need a lot of detail accounting 101 that to be very well versed in. It's more concept. Okay, let's talk about for next year as a principal. What do you now? Let's assume you're in a central office role. What big initiatives do you have at Rawlinson, and what, if any, money do you need? How are you planning? And so it's that kind of big picture planning that you need to have. And so all that to say is that it's very natural for you to think that you need a lot of work or some work in budgeting and this, that, or that. And the reality is, what you will get, and what I'll try to do in this role for you, is to have you sit in on meetings where you can see all those people coming together for the budget and what that looks like in a real, just not even 10,000, 30,000 foot level. And you could do this even now. You don't have to be going through a doctorate or a soup certificate. Is board meetings. At our board meetings, we begin usually January, February for an August adoption of a budget. So you'll hear, all right, we're going to start budgeting for the, in this case, it was the 23-24 school year, and we started in January, February of 23. This is where we're at now. This is what it's looking like we're going to be at, like many districts deficit. This is what we anticipate to get in revenues. These are the expenditures, these are the special things that need to be added to for next year. And so you'll get to see all the planning and discussion that goes into that for an adoption of a budget in August. And so what you'll be able to do, and I'll be able to help you, is get you into the behind the scenes meetings that involve trustees and our deputy for finance, so you can see. And if you really like that, kind of the more detailed discussions and planning that go for a district this size, which again, 30,000 foot, it's about $1 billion budget, of which I used to say in the Dr. Folks era was about 87% for you and I in salaries. That's gone up to, and then during the Woods era, it was more like 88, 89. We're now saying, I checked with our CFO, with our deputy soup, we can say that of the $1 billion budget we have, about 90% goes to salaries.
Unbelievable.
So remember, we're a government entity. We're not, obviously, we're not here to make money.
Yeah.
And so that gives you an idea of how the budget needs to flow. And what we need to do now, we have bond money that we're always working on buildings, but anyhow, that kind of gives you a big picture perspective on budget. The other one you had here, the instructional piece, you were asking, is that more Jordan and whatever? That really gets into the real meat of it all is Diana Ely, who does work under Jordan, but there again, it's like what areas, and you'll see, and even based on it, we might mirror your campus as to what areas do we need to work on instructionally. Right now, we're kind of in a gray zone with instruction because of A through F, the legalities, some districts suing the state, and the whole accountability thing. As far as what is a fair system, and was it okay, or was it fair to roll this one out the way they did, where they didn't tell us what the new changes were going to be? So I'm really happy that our superintendent said, let's not sweat this. I don't want principals to think, oh my gosh, I have, or I'm going to get an F, when the reality is we don't know what the state and how and what the end result's going to be with the new what are we calling it, star redesign, or
That's what they said.
son of star, daughter of star, whatever. So I'm glad he took that approach. But I say that because, and I think as a principal now for you, and then if you're stepping into a central office role, need to realize, and personalities really come out, where I know in my days it was tax. And so it's like, I used to tell teachers, it's like, we have a report card, we have a responsibility, we have an accountability system that we need to be aware of. Not that I want you to teach to the test, but you can't be, as an elementary principal, you can't be teaching dinosaurs for 4 months, just because you like dinosaurs.
The history of chocolate.
Yeah.
No.
So you gotta, we need to stick to the district curriculum, and know that I'm gonna say, all right, Sherry Medels, in my day again as an elementary teacher, I'd say, you have 21 kids. How many of those, and we had these data meetings throughout the year, how many back in the day now we have approaches and meets, and what's the other one? Master. Which I know is all good, but you have to have, I guess nowadays, because back in the day I'd say, okay, Sherry, how many of your 21 are good to go, are passing? And in August or September you say, well, I got 15 for sure, I'm comfortable based on last year's or whatever. Okay, so we got 6 we're going to work on. How are we going to support them? You need counselors, you need reading specialists, math specialists. What are we doing for those 6? So that hopefully that conversation in February turns into 19 or 20 of the 21 that you look me in the eye and say that they're going to be fine, they're going to pass. I know that kind of seems a little too direct nowadays, but that's how we operated, and I think you still keep the human touch to it. I'm not saying, oh, forget Johnny or the 2 that you said, but it really, I think, raised accountability. I think, and for me, I always very fortunate. Teachers responded well, and we did well. Back in the exemplary days, did you remember those?
Yes.
Recognized exemplary.
Yes.
Sherry, every school that I was at was exemplary. So, and I tell you that because I think there's a balance there. I kind of try to epitomize that, what I'm talking about, as far as where's that balance. You have to have accountability, all of us. And I used to, when I first got to one of my schools, it was like, well, you put all our CDBs and you put our names and then you publish them. And I said, yeah, because my name is next to the school when it goes in the Express News or wherever. So the point is, how do we, if Sherry, you did great on this last CDB, what can you share with the others of us? So anyhow, I'll stop telling stories, but
No,
but,
it's great.
but that's, so all that for competency 6. I think we're in a weird place right now, but to answer your question, as far as it is more Jordan, but it's really everything that goes along with what Diana Ely and the PD and everything that they do that goes with it. So.
Okay.
And then you have 4 respond to influence, larger political. Yeah, that's Board of Trustees. Oh boy, that's a whole which it's a whole class in itself. But we'll get you in front of trustees. You'll see, and it's 7 of them that hire the superintendent in our district anyhow. Team of 8. And sometimes I'll say a team of 8.5. I'm the 0.5 because in my role I get to deal with them that often.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and they will call me, and which, not to get sidetracked. So new superintendent, and different boards and different districts operate differently, but here we're so large that it is not. It's common for them to call me or someone like Leroy in facilities, hey, what's going on? Or I heard about this. And we always ask them, and I always report back to the superintendent, hey, I spoke to trustee about this, or so-and-so called me about this, transportation and so forth. But it is, that's the area that's probably, for a principal, the one that you'll kind of see the most in terms of having to learn and see the dynamics that are involved there. And ultimately, again, getting us all into the superintendent's leadership. What's our vision? So anyway, we'll get you from 1 to hopefully a 4 or 5.
Thank you.
Those are great.
We are at 29 minutes, so we are doing great.
I was gonna say,
We only have a few more questions here, so this is great. We are at number 3, and so just basically, it's asking in what ways. It's asking me, do I expect the internship will help me in achieving these goals?
Okay.
And so, without reading all of this to you, I mean, I had to submit it all, but it'll give the opportunity to observe real world. Really, it's that real world experience that I'm looking for, so that I can put what I'm learning and reading into practice, or watch what that practice might look like. So, the next phase, or the next question, it kind of puts us to the second piece, right?
Okay.
And the second piece says, one of the goals of the practicum this semester is to participate in 80 hours. And so I know we've sort of already embedded some of this in our conversation, but this will go into a little bit more detail. Field-based activities aligned to my self-assessment, right? And so if I jump into number 4, it asks, what might you do to assure opportunities in a broad spectrum of activities related to the competencies of focus? So not necessarily leaning on and waiting for Mr. Galindo to tell me what to do, right? But
Sorry, that was a little, for the record, a little nap there. Sorry. It's an old building.
but more about like, what might I do, right, to take some more ownership in that. And so some examples, I didn't put them there because it hadn't happened yet. I wrote this a while ago. So for instance, I'm doing an equity audit. Another course that I'm taking right now within the program is special problems, and an equity audit is my major project for this semester. And so I reached out to Deanna because she was like the first person that came to mind in terms of that, and so that was perfect. I met with her. I did a few interviews. Dr. Lopez, I interviewed him. She had to do a principal, a teacher, and a superintendent.
Dr.
Right.
Lopez.
Mark.
Oh,
Garcia. I called my own stomping grounds. I was like, hey, meet with me. So I interviewed him and did all that last principals meeting right after that.
Okay.
And then I met with my math department coordinator because she's amazing and she's just wonderful.
Okay.
So I met with her and it's really just, what does equity mean to you? It was different. It's very different type interview questions. And then I met with Deanna. Oh, amazing. So I met with Deanna for like almost 2 hours. And it was incredible. And she gave me, I was just like pages and pages of wonderful wisdom. And so after I met with her, then she mentioned reaching out to Scott, Mackenzie.
Okay.
And she said that Scott McKenzie is actually in that work. There's a committee that's happening currently he's actually doing an equity audit. And I was like, wow, I have to do it all by myself. He gets a whole committee. Can I be in this? So she's like, yes. So she reached out to Scott. Scott reached out to me. So I'm now on the committee.
Okay.
So those hours will count towards, so that'll be awesome. So I'll check some of those off. In addition to that, some of it's pretty particular, some of the activities that go towards the 80 hours. I didn't give you all this. This is too much.
No, that's fine.
But one of the things they ask is that we do 2 personnel interviews that are of a set, like principal level or higher. So this summer, I just so happened to, Leroy had reached out to me and asked if I wanted to help with the assistant director of plant manager.
Yeah,
It was
yeah.
great. So I was
Good.
able to sit on that in July, and it counts.
Good.
So
Yeah, because that's not always that you as principals will get involved in that. So that's good you got invited in that.
I know. I was so thank you, Leroy. So I got to meet with him, and then I reached out to him because I guess there's an assistant director it just posted. Because that one was maintenance. I think this one is. I emailed him, and
Okay.
anyway, I didn't want to flood your email, and I
Right.
figured I'd just tell you. And so I asked him. I said, "Hey," I told him why. Right? I was like, "Hey, it was great," and he's like, "Let me look into that. Yeah, let me for sure. I could get you in because it was great." So hopefully he lets me, and that would check off those 2 requirements.
So those are district level interview panels, basically. Yeah.
Yep.
Good job.
And
Have you served on a principal panel? I thought you
I
had.
never
You
had.
haven't?
No.
Well, we don't. Well, in middle school, we haven't in a while hired new principals, but that's something that possibly we could get you on if any of your colleagues retire or leave us.
Yeah,
So-
never know, right? December's coming.
Yeah.
Never know. So those are a couple of things I wanted to
Yeah.
mention that.
Yeah.
So what I said was I'm going to reach out to those who oversee departments, all that, and so
Yeah.
I'm doing that in the background.
Okay.
Anything else you think of throughout the process, for sure, just know that I'll get my 80 hours and I'll be running around.
No, without a doubt. You know, the 80 hours, I mean, you mentioned interviews, but there's a number of different committees that you're more than welcome to attend, and actually now, having read all this, probably should attend, from safety and security to, you know, you mentioned the finance piece you wanted to be part of. My committee as a deputy is the policy and intergovernmental relations department or policy committee that I have, and so all things policy, sometimes even some of the dress code and stuff like that come through that department. And what we do as deputies is we have several trustees that are on our committee, and so the committee work really is where all the work is done before it goes to the full board. So that gives you all sorts of opportunities to see the end of the inner works of what, you know, ends up in sometimes policy or at, you know, at a board meeting. Probably would be good for you also, and usually you guys have you know, interviews with different staff members. You said you talked to Deanna Dean, you know Leroy, but it could be that you also want to talk to you know, Janice Jordan or Ben Muir in HR, kind of an in-depth kind of interview kind of discussion, and all of those are good hours and time that you, I think, will appreciate in terms of, you know, what goes on at the district level. So we can do that as well to make sure you get the required hours. That again has never been a problem with everyone that I've worked with in terms of, you know, getting their hours in terms of different activities. Board meetings, I mean, if you haven't already, you might want to begin to come to those and knock out a few hours easy, sometimes up to 4.
I didn't know if that was something that I could just do or if I needed to be invited to.
No, you can show up, and then I'll let, you know, superintendent know, trustees, and they're gonna see, why Sherry here? You know, some of them might know you, and so that's not uncommon either to have folks in the audience that are working on their soup certificate, their doctorate, you know. So yeah, you can. First one's October 20 for this month anyhow, October 26th, I think. We'll get you the date for that. The other thing, Sherry, although it's elementary, that is I'm involved with, that'll get you some good experience of just policies, procedures, is we're opening a school in August.
I saw that.
And so Chumley Elementary.
Yeah.
And so the process we go to redraw boundary lines, very controversial sometimes. And so you can see how we go. We're, you know, I've been doing this for, I don't know, 15 years now. The district has followed this similar format for over 25 years now. But we go to the community. It ends up being a hearing that we have. We have a committee, School Boundary Advisory Committee, made up of parents, staff. And so for you to see that process would be good, and good learning that ultimately ends up at the board with the new boundary for a brand new school, which, like I said, sometimes a lot of emotion, some controversy at times, but all in what we feel is in the best interest of kids in that area when we have a new school. But you could you know, be part of that.
Thank you. That would be wonderful.
And then I don't know if at some point you did an equity, you said some
an equity audit is what I'm
audits.
working on through December.
But there could be other projects that certainly I think would be good, and other students have done everything from, you know, putting together, redoing, not redoing, but reorganizing admin regs versus policy, which both exist obviously, to redoing the course at high school, the course cards, you know, and organizing them in a different manner. We've had folks that have really, as their project, kind of leaned toward HR and then redone what became kind of the foundation of a new evaluation for paraprofessionals. Obviously for professionals, we have for teachers mainly T-tests, administrators T-tests, but through the work of students, we've had a redo of our auxiliary and you know, like from bus drivers to secretaries, evaluations that you know, we were able to, with some good work from students, re-examine and come up with a new one. We made some modifications.
Oh, that's
Trying to think of what other projects, I mean, those are just, that's an HR one, that's an instructional one, a policy one.
It does mention go to your school's district policy board or policy manual, I'm sorry, and find the specific policies related to contracts.
Mhm.
Visit HR
That's
and
HR.
get blank copies of 3 contracts, and then it wants me to summarize, and then I got to write a paper on it. So that's, you were mentioning talking to Ben, and I was thinking, okay, that'll help me
Yeah.
if he wouldn't mind meeting with me. I know
The
he's
other
super
thing,
busy.
Sherry, that, again, not the sexy part of school administration, but I'm the person when it comes to grievances.
Okay.
So a formal grievance versus a complaint,
Mm-hmm.
where it's recorded, lawyers are involved. Level one is always the building level leader, the principal, the director, whomever. And then level two, we're large as a district, we have a level 2 hearing officer.
Mm-hmm.
Level 3 is the superintendent, which in this district is me. 98% of the time it's me and a panel of 2 others, or a panel of 3, I should say, that hear it instead of the superintendent. And we really try hard not to ever have a level 4 grievance, which goes to the board of trustees.
Mm-hmm.
But that really is a lot. I mean, that's pretty much in my lane all the way, along with hearing officer, which is now our compliance / hearing officer in HR that works closely with me. But there too is something that, although probably because of legalities, you can't get directly involved,
Mm-hmm.
but you can hear and from afar, if you will, kind of know what some of the areas are that we deal with, which include, believe it or not, everything from a grading policy from a parent to a job that someone didn't get an employee to file a grievance for that, to believe it or not, cheerleading and not making the football team. Those last 2 especially, and I think it was very wise of our legislators. There is in law now a clause that if it's an issue involving UIL, it doesn't have to go to the board. The superintendent appoints a committee, their decision is final, and they'll look into a UIL related matter.
Wow.
Which I think is great, because now boards don't have to hear, why didn't, Sally make the cheerleader team, or Tom didn't make the basketball team, which, believe it or not, I've had those in my office before.
Mm-hmm.
Those, mom and dad, he didn't make the team.
Wow.
And so, yeah, you wouldn't think in this size of the district that,
Mm-hmm.
they'd come to the superintendent,
Definitely.
but they have. Yeah.
Definitely.
So anyhow, all things grievance are something that perhaps you can, if you want, I can give you all you wanted to know about that.
I do definitely need information on that. That's not an area that I feel confident about at all.
And sometimes it gets a little ugly, but that's life. And we try it as best as possible, work through to where we don't have major lawsuits or anything like that.
Okay, so we're almost done. We're at the end. We have just a few minutes left. It asks. This is one of the ones I need to make sure I go over.
Okay.
Hold on real quick. Number 6. What professional development outside our partnership with the site supervisor, obviously, will I seek out, engage in to broaden my levels of expertise? A detailed plan, timelines for activities. These may include outreach to other administrators in and out of the district, as well as conferences, seminars, involvement, and it goes on and on, right? So one of the things I wrote about was visioning for public ed in Texas and transformational target projects. I was part of the Principals Institute, and so they, thank you, you let me do that, cohort 11. So it was a couple cohorts ago, a few years ago, and I've continued to facilitate as a principal leader throughout the year. I just went to facilitate in September, so I just facilitated. And then they asked me to come back for TASA Midwinter, which is so funny because part of the requirement for the superintendency through UTSA is we actually have to go to TASA Midwinter. And so the 2 will overlap, which is so cool. So I'm not exactly sure what I'm facilitating yet. They haven't sent us like the itinerary and everything, but we do, we're assigned a group of principals. So I had about 11 this last time, and they pre-meet with us and we kind of go over all the learning and activities, and they really just want us to facilitate, right? No dead time, no quiet time, right? We need to continue the conversations, maybe ask some additional thinking questions. just help along the conversations and the learning. We sit on a principal panel, so we were able to do principal panel. It's always fun, and talk about just some of the things that we've learned through PI and that we've implemented on our campus. And so I've continued doing that. So I believe some of those hours will also be so great if it does. The other piece, and I don't know if this is part of it or not, but it was something that I thought of, was with Solution Tree. Myself, Monica at Jefferson, and Lou at Stinson, we've all teamed up because we feel like all three of our campuses really need some in-depth learning with the 4 questions and 3 and 4 in particular of the PLC. So we've together put our monies together, and they're coming in. Did I put the date? February, that staff development day.
Oh yeah.
They're coming over, and we're all going to go to one place, and they're going to come in. So anyway, that's just another, just sort of how I'm like working with other principals, talking through that, bringing in the professional development for our campuses. Okay, I put second year with UTSA doctoral program. That's continuous PD, like I'm doing, on the outside. Right. Currently, I'm in politics of education and special problems in a rural district. Number 7, how might my site supervisor best assist me in fulfillment of this plan? And how often will the 2 of us meet to assure staying frequent, contact, form of communication? So she basically is just asking, and then you had already kind of answered that. So in person would be the best. How often, what do you think the frequency might be? Because she did specify that.
Yeah. So every group and every individual has been different.
Okay.
Currently we just wrapped up, and now there's so many different cycles because of the online programming. So I'm glad this is UTSA, for the record. I went through UTSA myself because there's so many other online programs. So I just got through with a group of 4 students that we met about every 3 weeks. That's what they chose, and they'd come in here, where are we at, and they had a project, and a lot of what you're doing as well. What do you need from me in terms of, for your coursework and meetings and interviews that I set up for them to have with different people, trustees. I've got them in to visit with both Dr. Woods, Dr. Kraft, all of which I can do with you as well. And so I would suggest whatever works for you, but probably at least once a month, or every 3 weeks, like I said, this group, and one of them sent me the appointments, and it was sometimes and it included during the summer, so it may have been a 30-minute just quick conversation, and not everyone was there, only 2 of the 3 or 3 of the 4, however many. And sometimes it was a full hour plus that they needed to get work done. So I prefer in person, and probably every 3-4 weeks would be good. I think that way you feel comfortable, whatever your comfort level is. And we can do both of which, and I realized today when I told you 3:30, that's probably a dismissal for you, isn't it?
Yeah.
Not a good time. So I could either come earlier or later, or you can come here like we did today, so that you are feeling comfortable and stay on top of things.
My duty is in the front of the school. I had it covered. We got a lot of people in the front, so it wasn't too bad. It was okay. They were like, "Oh, we got it. We're fine." So
had I been there,
yeah, I mean, I would have been in the office.
I was gonna say, because we'd be in there while dismissal's going on.
Yeah, it would have been loud and you know how it is. So okay, 3 weeks sounds good to me. She did say. Because we had offered once a month, I think in our class, we'd say, well, what about once a month? And she was like, you probably need to meet a little bit. Her reasoning was, and it made sense, was she's like, because they're busy people and, opportunities are going to come on their plate weekly. Yeah. And if you're not there, in their forefront, not that they're just busy. And we're like, oh, so she's like, you want to kind of keep yourself around.
Yeah, okay. And in concept, I agree, because one of your, Cassie, and I'll think after this meeting with you too, it's like she needed hours and projects. So what a perfect time. It's like, oh, I know exactly what would be good for you, what you could help the district with. So she, I'm sure told you a little bit about that. And so, 3 weeks would be good to kind of keep me in line as to, Sherry's working on this, and here's an upcoming meeting or a project or something that she might learn from. So that would help. Does that work for you?
I'll send you an invite.
Okay.
Yep. And lastly, include topics, questions that I'm wanting to glean information on regarding the role and responsibility of superintendent role. What was his or her trajectory to their position, asking you what was best prepared to you, what advice can you share, and how best prepared you for the role that you're currently in.
that 8? I don't see it.
That's number 8.
I'm sorry?
Yeah, it's number 8.
Oh, okay.
Is that on there?
So one of the decisions you'll have to make, perhaps in the future, kind of like me, is as you go through your studies, your career, personal life, is do you want to, without a shadow of a doubt, I want to be a superintendent and do so, because if that's the case, you probably need to open your horizons. Kind of like I remember a young gal who got into NLA and left us because she wanted to be an assistant principal somewhere, and she, by gosh, went to Bernie to be an assistant principal, but she came back. And so I say that because and I'm at the last phase of my career. I've been very open with everyone after 33 years. Chose to stay here in Northside, with primarily one superintendent, another one that Dr. Folks actually, worked closely with him too, but really was literally next door, as you know, to Woods for all of his years as a superintendent. But I say that because one of your classes is rural administration.
Yes.
Is if you want to be a superintendent, there's different paths, obviously, but in this district, the path that Woods had is not a common one. I don't think as much, and so I say that because it could be if you wanted to go to another district, that's something you need to be prepared for. I always said and thought I'll be here. I'm a baseball guy, as you can tell. So I didn't want to go manage in the AAA or AA. I figured if I'm going to be superintendent, I want to stay in the big leagues, in the north side of San Antonio, northeast or whatever. And the situation obviously didn't work out that way, but I'd rather be in a supportive role and in this role, which I think many people would aspire to be in their careers. And I'm like, I'm good if this is it, which very well that probably is going to be my career, but chose to do that rather than, hey, there's a Schertz-Cibolo or a Seguin, which already currently I think there's 9 Region 20 superintendency jobs. Wow. So you're in a great spot. In fact, if you were already there, there's 9 other districts out there in Region 20, I think, that are looking for soups. And so if you're willing to go and leave, that's a decision that you would need to make, or stay here and, like you said, and lined out, maybe executive director and then assistant soup, deputy soup, which in our district, our system is kind of the hierarchy of things. So if you wanted to stick around for that. And you said 10 years, so you got some years left. I can't say I'm going to be around for 10 years on this.
It asked specifically for 10 years. I don't know that even 5 years is appropriate to say. I feel so differently than I did 6 years ago when I got into this role. I feel like Eric's a really good mentor. He's very honest. And guides and leads in that way, and I'm not just saying that someone
right.
Like I really mean that. No, he really is.
I think
good.
Differently of Eric. I'm kidding. He's a good guy. He's a good guy. And a good mentor, yeah.
He is. He's very in terms of being like honest and real and just saying, hey, listen, this is what you got to do, and I'm very open to that. I want to grow. I want to be better. So in terms of being in my 6th year, I feel really good about the principalship. It's very, I would not use the word easy because nothing about this position is easy. Definitely. Yeah. And then moving into the next phase feels right. Mentoring principals feels right. It feels like it would just be a great next step. Whether that's executive or assistant, I know there's a hierarchy there, but
yeah, you're in the sweet spot there in that. I was a principal for 7 years, and at a point too in my age-wise where I thought, man, I got a ways to go, and so I was fortunate enough to come over as assistant soup at elementary after 7 years as a principal, and so, which is a whole different topic too, because what determines how many years do you need to be a principal before you come to central office? There is no right answer. It depends on the individual, the maturity, their skill set, and everything else. And so, no, that's all good, though, in terms of also for you, the cycle as I see people my age or older that are about to, cycle out. And so that provides a lot of opportunity for you here. If I could go to 6,
Yes,
go back,
of
because
course.
I do think that, Sherry, it is great. I mean, this is a great experience, especially if you get into a cycle of coming to our board meetings and see the board dynamics here. But then you go to like an SAISD or an Edgewood or a Bernie or a Medina Valley. Just the board makeup and their interaction, I think, speaks a lot and really kind of gives you a real big picture perspective that you need to have. Similarly, I'm glad to hear you going to Midwinter. We just got back from TASB. I think they used to require, when I went through the program through UTSA that you are, I went to TASB as well as Midwinter, if I'm not mistaken.
Oh no, yeah, they just.
We did both conferences, and so that offers you now a real big picture perspective. And then if you ever want to be a superintendent, because at the time
I don't know.
At the time I didn't know it, but a lot of those, like TASB, a lot of those conferences is a lot of networking, because you have 1,100 school districts. And everyone's like, all right, who's retiring? What's the next job? Because the life expectancy, here's the other thing. I shouldn't say the life expectancy, the career, the tenure.
I get you.
The tenure of a superintendent, I was just talking to Dr. Kraft about this, in Texas is about 3 years, okay? And you go to these conferences and you see why.
Wow.
Everyone is always looking, I shouldn't say everyone, many are looking for what's the next job opening? Because a lot of people like him, he's a good example. He started as superintendent at age 31 in a small rural district.
Wow.
Then he jumped to Killeen for 10 years at least, 10 plus years. And now he's in the 4th largest. Wow. And so he did a good span of 10 in Killeen, which really, I think, developed him great, primed him to be a superintendent here. He's going to do a great job. But for many, it's more of the 2-3 years, 3 years, 4 years.
Wow.
And every time you want a bigger school district, because it's a bigger raise, a bigger salary.
Yeah.
I mean, it's natural.
Yeah,
I mean,
of course.
And so most people go that kind of trajectory is what they try. And so you'll see some of that. I didn't know it then, but I'll let you know when you go to Midwinter, although you're going there to learn and see and everything else, there's a lot of that networking going on. Yeah.
I mean, I've seen it for sure. I just, I'm so happy in Northside. I know that they talked to us about this in our
And you went to
program.
school here, right?
Yeah, I went to Holmes.
Holmes,
I went to
yeah.
Pat Neff.
Yeah.
And that's
I
my
remember
home. My
that.
kids, we live here. So I feel very invested. Bernie was kind of a fluke. I don't know how it happened. And then I came back. But I learned a lot.
Yeah, both good and bad, I'm sure.
Yeah, just the different hats and the political. Woo! You're just like, oh, okay, that's so-and-so's uncle and brother and sister and daughter, and you're like,
yeah, it's a great experience, because, and if you chose to go back to something like that, because it is in many districts like that, it's amplified, the politics, because like you said, it's the uncle or the nephew or the whatever, as well as you don't have the resources and personnel to do the specialized stuff, so you find yourself wearing a lot of hats, which you probably lived through. So.
Well, I'm gonna stop this. We are good.